Welcome to Knattering with the Knights. Nord Anglia International School Hong Kong's PE department talking about sport, physical activity, health and a host of other topics. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Knattering with the Knights. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to the podcast. I highly recommend you go back to listen to some of our previous episodes. This is episode number 12 and we have lots and lots of insightful stories from some of our teachers and special guests in our previous editions. Today I sit down with Mr Matthew Trethewey, the newest addition to our school in the Business and Economics department. He talks about some of his involvement in ultra marathons and other high-end endurance events. It's a great episode and one that should inspire lots of our listeners. So get up and get active and get the earphones in and enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome back to our latest episode of Knattering with the Knights. Today I'm joined by our Business and Economics teacher, Mr Matthew Trethewey, who joined the school at the beginning of the academic year, as well as teaching our senior pupils the wonders of the business and economical world. Mr Trethewey is a keen athlete, mainly with a preference towards hardcore endurance events. How are you today, Mr Trethewey?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we're going to dive straight in. And I know you've completed a long list of endurance events in the past. So can you just give us a little overview of some of those events you've done in the past, in your life so far?
Well, I got into running mostly in Hong Kong, and I've been in Hong Kong since 2010. So I think the first big races I did were the half and the full Hong Kong marathon. That was in 2013 and 2014. And then since then, I've transitioned into trail running. And since 2014, I've done a whole bunch of races. I think the highlights are the 100-kilometre races, the big ones like the North Face, Hong Kong 100, Trans Lantau. And then a few years ago in 2017, I did the Ultra Trail Tai Lo Shan, which is 100 miles, which was a big achievement. And since then, I've really kind of not really sure what I want to do next. I did a big one in Argentina called Racing the Planet, Patagonia 250, but that was a stage race. Okay. It was over 6 days. So it was like approximately 40 kilometers a day. It wasn't like that. There was a long march of 80k a day and there was some shorter distance. But I think the 100 miles has been my biggest achievement so far. And just hoping that the restrictions will be loosened up soon so I can do more races abroad. Because I think in Hong Kong I've done them all.
Okay. Yeah. All right, nice one. So then let's go back to the kind of start. As a kind of youngster then, so what was your kind of background in sport from an early age back in Wales?
Well, I'm the youngest of three sons. My two older brothers were always cricketers. They played youth level for Glamorgan. So we've been quite a sporty family. Obviously I grew up in Wales, so as soon as I could walk, they would throw me a rugby ball. I just didn't really understand rugby. I mean, the rules were always confusing to me. And I remember once my first experience when I was around 8 years old. I think it was on a Sunday morning. I was going to go rugby training, and I was all kitted up. I had my shorts, my boots on, and I was just too scared to go. I just didn't want to go to rugby training. And then I was always into football. I liked watching football. Liverpool were the team back in the late 80s, and I went football training, and I didn't look back. And then football became my sport, and I did quite well at it. I got represented for my county, but I didn't reach the top levels. I just wasn't good enough. But I did have a good footballing career up until around the age of 18, and then I stopped playing.
Okay. And then obviously, so with that kind of background, you must have had a decent level of baseline endurance, which is maybe what kind of pushed you towards running events eventually? Kind
of, yeah. I mean, like looking back in my childhood, I grew up in the valleys, near Pontypridd, which is about 15 kilometres from Cardiff. Big outdoor spaces. I used to love playing in the woods with my friends, hide and seek and all that. But yeah, I was always playing sports. I was quite a fit lad, so I had a good basic ground level of fitness, and I think running came to me quite naturally. Actually, I just like the outdoors. And in Hong Kong, like most people, when you get here, you don't expect to see all these hills and mountains around you. And I used to hike, and then I would see these crazy people running past. I'd be thinking, what are they doing? They're running from Moiwo to Dongchong. Are they crazy? And then a few years later, I'm doing exactly the same thing. So it's kind of a bit of a natural progression.
All right, so then let's kind of zoom in on some of these events you've done so far. So you mentioned that your first kind of endurance event here in Hong Kong was the half and the full marathon. How did those events shape up for you? Do you have any kind of memories from those?
Well, the half was fine because I was living in Dongchong at the time. I used to do a lot of road running. I was working in the school in Dongchong, and I lived there, and I used to run around Dongchong, which was still kind of quite quiet. The roads are kind of very empty. And I was doing 10, 15k runs a lot. So the half marathon was actually quite easy for me. And that was what pushed me on to do a full marathon.
Okay.
So my time was quite good. I think I had 1 hour, 33 minutes. And the kind of golden aim for most runners is to do a sub-3 marathon. If you cut that in half, it's a 90-minute half marathon. So I was pleased with my run, but I wanted more. I wanted a bigger challenge. So the next year I did the full marathon. And that went quite well. The course is difficult though. I mean, there's parts of the course which have uphill, quite big inclines, like the tunnel, which goes, I think it's the western tunnel from Shunwan to Kowloon. There's an incline on that, and it's hard to keep your momentum going. So, but the race went fine. I think I had 3 hours 33 minutes, so I was quite pleased with that.
Yeah. And then, so was that the kind of basis? Where did you want to build up to after the marathon? Like, what was your next kind of steps, maybe towards the trail running?
Well, I think it's just more and more distance. I think once you realise that I mean, like, this is the funny thing. I remember in university talking to my friends, watching the London Marathon on TV, saying, one day I'm going to do a marathon, and they'd just be laughing at me. And here I was doing a marathon. I was thinking, well, yeah, that I feel great, I've achieved it, but I wanted something more. You know, I wanted to take on, what am I capable of doing? So the natural progression from a marathon, which is just over 42 kilometres, is to do a 50k trail run. And that was one of the next steps I took.
Okay. And then what was the kind of experience, like how did you notice the difference between a road run like a marathon and that trail run experience? What was the big difference you noticed?
Well, it was huge. The first 50 kilometre trail run I did was the Lantau 50 back in 2014. And that was a big shock to the system because in a marathon, it's more about keeping a consistent pace, whereas trail running is completely different. You have a lot of ups and downs and different terrain. And what I did in that 50k is I went out at a very fast pace, and I completely lost all my energy around halfway, and the last 25k was a real struggle. I didn't think I was going to finish, but I managed to hike it out because I'm not a sort of person to throw in the towel. So I finished it, but it was painful. Mm-hmm. So I learned that trail running is definitely a different, completely different experience to road running. But I was hooked from that moment onwards.
I love that you felt like it was such a big challenge, and you were obviously clearly in some discomfort, but that was enough to encourage you to come back for some more.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all, you kind of learn from your experience. So obviously I learned not to go out too quickly next time, but I also learned that I really, really enjoyed the experience. I love running. I love being out in nature. I also love the excitement, the atmosphere of the race. So you combine all those things together, and I've got the perfect event for me, which was a trail run. So yeah, I haven't looked back since that moment.
So out of the list of the races you've done so far, what would you kind of put at the top of the chart as the toughest race that you've done?
Well, there's been many different events. They've all been tough in their own way. But I think for me, the Trans-Lantau, it was my first 100k race. That was in 2016. I mean, wanting to do a 100k race for a long, long time. They're quite difficult to get into in Hong Kong. They're oversubscribed, so you have to get a lottery, which means you enter a lottery and you might get an opportunity to join the race. Trans-Lantau at that time was one of the last races where it was first come, first served. Okay. So if you were quick, you could get into the race, and I got in. And I was really looking forward to it. I've been training for it for months. However, a month or two before the race, I suffered from runner's knee. Runner's knee is when you do too much running, you get tendinitis, I think it's what it's
Tendinitis,
called.
yeah.
And that means that your knee hurts if you run. You can hike, but it's just like an ache, and you can't run. Anyway, so I did the Translanto, and I was in 5K into the race, and I could feel my knee going. And I knew that was kind of expected because my training a couple of weeks before, it was flaring up, and I was resting. Hopefully it would go away, but it came at 5K into the race. But I wanted to do it, so all I did is I targeted the next checkpoint, because checkpoints are around 10K, every 10K. And I just thought, well, let's get to the next checkpoint and I can make a decision. So I kept going. I had lots of painkillers with me, Nurophens. I managed to get through quite a lot of them. And I got to halfway, and it was really hurting, and I was way at the back of the pack. There is cut-off times for 100K races, and I was near the cut-off time, but I kept going. And just through sheer determination, I finished. I mean, I remember around 70K, I was next to some guy from Thailand. He must have been in his 70s. He was fit, but he was old. But, I was really inspired by him. He lent me his spray, which I could spray onto my knee to dull the pain. I was in so much pain that I had to keep my legs straight. Because if I bent my knee, I'd be
really
sheer agony. So going down steps was just horrendous, and obviously I got people running past me, so mentally it was tough. Anyway, I was one of the last people to finish that race. Actually, it got cancelled after 80K because the weather, it was so foggy in Lantau.
Wow.
The people couldn't see where they were going, but I was the last person through the last checkpoint, and I was one of the last people to finish the race. So I did it it was silly because I injured myself. I was out for about 2 months after that. I had to get my knee looked at, and I had to take some extensive time of rest. But I was just amazed that I basically battled through pain for 95K to finish the race, just because I wanted to do the 100K. But next time I have an aching knee, I won't be doing that again. So, but that for me was just an amazing experience of just sheer determination. I was surprised what I was capable of. So it wasn't the most enjoyable, but in terms of achievement, I feel it's the best.
Okay. And I'm just selfishly going to ask you about the Nine Dragons. So I've done the Nine Dragons 50K, but I can see here that you've done Nine Dragons 50 miles. So they do a 2-part race, Nine Dragons. They do the 50 miles on the Saturday and a 50K on the Sunday. And there's some guys who will do both. I assume you did one, did you? Or?
Well, I entered to do both, but I only managed to do one.
Okay.
So 50 miles is about 85 kilometres. And and again, in that race, I was feeling my knee. So, but I finished it, and it was a tough course. And then it finishes in Taipo. I live in Hong Kong Island. So by the time you get home, take a shower, have something to eat, and go to sleep, the alarm goes off. The motivation to go back to Taipo and to the 50K was not many people did the double. A lot of people signed up. They had a lot of DNFs, DNS, which means did not start for that race. I remember them saying, but I didn't do both. And I think people who do both deserve a pat on the back, because that's a big, big accomplishment.
Yeah, there was some guys with me the year I did it if one guy finished a couple of minutes in front of me, which was a real demoraliser because he had done the 50 mile the day before and looked better than I did at the finish line. And I remember thinking, that's different level. I kind of want to zoom into the Patagonia race in Argentina, just because it sounds very different as a kind of stage race. So can you just share when it was and what the kind of breakdown of that race was?
Yeah, so it's organised by Four Deserts. They were a Hong Kong-based company. I'm not sure if they are anymore. They used to have a shop in Shongwan where they used to sell products, but that went recently. I'm not sure why. Anyway, they organise races around the world called the Four Deserts. There's one in the Gobi Desert in China. Okay. There's one in the Sahara Desert in Africa. There's one in South America in I can't remember where it is. Chile, I think. It's the Atacama Desert. And there's one in Antarctica. But every 2 years they have a roaming race, and these races take place in different. They had one in Iceland, they had one in Madagascar, and they had one in Patagonia. And I wanted to do that one because I was drawn to Patagonia, and that was their biggest event. Their roving race. That was the most popular event they ever had. They had something like about 300, 400 participants in that. So yeah, how it works is 250 kilometers, and it's broken up over 6 days. You have 1 day of rest after the long march. The long march is usually the 4th day, and it's usually around 100 kilometers. So approximately, it's like 20, 30k most days, plus 100k, and the last day is 10k, because they want everyone to finish together.
Okay.
But the thing is with these foot races that you carry all your equipment.
Okay.
So I was carrying around 12 kilograms of kits. Obviously, it's Patagonia, so Patagonia is quite cold and wet. So it was mandatory equipment. So you take a sleeping bag. You've got to take all your food with you. You've got to take 2,000 calories a day minimum. It's all checked. They won't let you start unless you have all this equipment. So the first couple of days, you're running around with a big, heavy backpack. And then over the days of the race, it gets lighter and lighter, and it gets easier and easier. Yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I think in terms of trail running, I've done better events, but what I really enjoyed about the foot race was just the camaraderie and all gathering around the campfire, sharing stories after the race, sleeping in a tent with people all over around the world. That was the best thing about that race. Yeah, again, it was another achievement. So the foot races are fun, but I still believe that the non-stop races have an edge over them, just because they're more, like you said, you introduced me as a hardcore endurance athlete. I do prefer the more like painful, hardcore, you really got to dig down and finish those types of races, yeah.
So Patagonia comes to my mind because I've watched the last couple of nights the world's toughest race with Bear Grylls, which is the like an adventure race which was hosted this year in Fiji, or last year, sorry, before obviously COVID, but they're moving it to Patagonia hopefully this year, but it's adventure race, and I think that would be up your street. So that's on Amazon Prime, guys. If you've got that, I'd recommend watching that one. Okay, so I also noticed from your notes that you gave me at the start that you've managed to summit the highest mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, which episode 8, guys, that was me and Mr Scrivener talking about that mountain in particular, because we've both been up there as well. So what was your kind of motivation to get involved in that, and have you got any future plans for high altitude mountains?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, a lot of my inspiration comes from people in my network. So I cycled all around Taiwan. That come from overhearing someone talk about it in dragon boating. I thought, wow, you can cycle around Taiwan? Tell me more. And I did it. A friend of mine, an old trail running friend, talked about Kilimanjaro. I saw his pictures on social media. I asked a few questions, and the next thing I knew, I was buying a package to go there. And I went to Kilimanjaro in 2016, and yeah, it was a fantastic experience. And very soon after that, I did the one in Borneo, Mount Kinabalu as well. I did them back to back. Yeah, but Kilimanjaro was fantastic. However, what I realized with that was it was just too easy for me. I mean, it was just a hard hike, which I'm more than used to in Hong Kong. In fact, I was running at the top of Kilimanjaro. So when I was at the top of Kilimanjaro, I said, okay, I'm glad I did this experience, but I need more of a challenge. So the plan is now to do higher altitudes. There is a mountain in Argentina called Aconcagua, which is difficult to pronounce, which is just short of 7,000 meters. And if you want to do anything greater than 7,000 meters, the expeditions ask you to do Aconcagua because they want you to see that you've handled the altitude. It doesn't necessarily look like the most difficult climb. It's more like a hike. Mm-hmm. But they want to see if you can handle the altitude. And then the plan is over the next, say, 10 years or so, is to get the training for high altitude alpine climbing. You can do that in New Zealand. And then there's Mount Lenin in some part of the old Soviet Union, and then take the steps towards the ultimate goal, which is to one day to do Everest. But I want to earn my right on that mountain, so I need to build myself up to it. I don't want to just be a corporate climber, as they say. Mm-hmm. I want to earn my right there. Okay,
and so on Kilimanjaro, did you feel any ailments towards the altitude, or did it not have much of an impact on you?
Oh yeah, I did. I mean, I took the medication they advised. I think it was kind of necessary. You had the tablets anyway. They wouldn't let you up there. Whether you took them or not was up to you. So yeah, around 2,500 meters, I was feeling the effects. But it was only for about half a day. I just felt dizzy and a little bit nauseous. But then you just follow the instructions. You eat some food, you drink some water, and then I was fine. And after that, I didn't feel anything. But altitude sickness, as if you read books, you watch videos, you listen to people who've done high altitude activities, they say it's random. It can just hit. It can affect anyone at any time. So just be prepared. But yeah, I think I am a pretty fit person. The people I was doing the expedition with, they don't run marathons, they don't do trail running. They're just average folks. So I don't want to say that I'm better than these people, but I was in a better shape. But I was affected by the altitude, yes, but it wasn't that much.
Okay. No, it's just I just recall it being torturous for me, and I was on heavy bouts of the medication, and it didn't seem to work. And I did base camp as well, and it was the same outcome. I was really struggled with it. So yeah, altitude and me maybe don't mix very well. So kind of bringing it back towards like the current situation that we find ourselves in. So obviously you are an active person, you like to get out and do things. COVID-19 has unfortunately caused a lot of events to be postponed, cancelled. So now things are hopefully moving towards being, normal again, and we're bringing pupils back to school. How have you noticed your kind of return to juggling teaching and maintaining your activity levels?
Well, I think to like students and other teachers, I think the first term is long, and I was very tired come November, December, which is unfortunate because that's when the weather cools down and that's when it's perfect for running. So often on the weekends, I would just be so tired in the morning when I would get up on a Saturday or a Sunday, I couldn't take myself out for a long run, which I would love to do. I would maybe just do a shorter run later in the day. But yeah, like now I'm working full time again back at school, which I love. I have to sort of work my activities into my schedule. So I do running on Tuesdays down Happy Valley. That's always there. Track training. I do Thursday runs with my social group. So I fit it all in, but it means that I'm very busy. Either I'm working or I'm working out. So there's not much else time for anything else. But thankfully in Hong Kong it's all on your doorstep. So you just 5 minutes out my door, I'm on a trail. So I can do it pretty much whenever I want.
And have you got any then, I know obviously you've mentioned some longer term targets, but have you got any short term targets, like in terms of getting involved in events, or are you just kind of biding your time and waiting for things to improve?
Well, I think next on the bucket list is a sub-3 marathon, and that would require a lot of training. I'm not there yet. However, people I go running with, I can keep up with them. It's just for a sub-3 marathon, can I keep that pace for 42k? So I can keep up with them maybe for 21k, but 42k, I don't think I've got the base fitness for that yet. So I know the race I'm going to do is going to be the Gold Coast, Australia marathon, which happens at the end of school term, which is perfect. It's normally at the start of July. Okay. So I originally wanted to do it in 21, this year, but that's looking very unlikely, and I don't think I've got enough time to train for it anyway. So more medium term, I'm looking to do that in 22 and start training for that maybe 6 months prior. So that's my next target, a sub-3 marathon. Okay,
good. Excellent. Okay, so for our listeners who are regular, you'll notice this is a slightly new edition. Mr Trethewey has kindly volunteered to be our first one into this, what we call our quick-ish fire round. So we've got some standard questions we're going to finish all our guests off with. The answers can be relatively short or they can be expanded on, which is why it's called quick-ish. And then we finish with a more prominent question at the end. So, are you ready?
Ready.
Right. Favourite food post long distance run, which for you?
A big bowl of hot soup noodles.
Oh, interesting choice. Okay. Interesting fact or darkest secret?
I read a lot, especially the last few years. I've read probably about 100 books now, and I reread them as well. So yeah, I love reading. Well,
I'll skip then to my next couple of questions down. Is what is your favourite book?
I've got lots of favourite books. I wouldn't say one in particular, but I do. Sir Richard Branson is an inspiration for me because he's an adventurist. He did hot air balloon adventures when I was growing up. He's an entrepreneur. He also suffered from dyslexia, which I read a lot in his book. And I think I've got mild symptoms of that as well. So I think dyslexia is more common than people realise, but I found that really interesting when I read his book. So I think that's a great book. I love that book.
So that's Losing My Virginity by Sir
Yes.
Richard Branson. I've actually read that one as well. It's a very good book. Favourite holiday destination?
Again, I think I love France because I love mountains. I love skiing. But I've been there in the summer as well, and the Alps are absolutely stunning. France has beaches. It's close to the UK. Amazing food, nice language, great country.
Okay. Favourite gadget?
My Garmin devices, mainly because either for my bike or for running, just because I can download maps and I can go running or cycling anywhere in the world and know where I'm going.
That's a good advice to have, by the way, guys, if you're getting interested in trail runs. Most famous person met?
So I grew up in Wales. Where I grew up was a real hotbed for rugby players. A couple of British and Lions players were in my school. Gethin Jenkins, Michael Owen, who was the captain of the Wales rugby team. I grew up with him. We used to play cricket together. I mean, obviously I'm not the tallest, but Michael Owen was huge. I think he's around 6'6". But he's a gentle giant, nice guy. I used to play cricket with him, and he went on to be the Wales captain and play for the British and Irish Lions. I've also met Mark Hughes when I went to watch Wales football, got his autograph. So yeah, those people.
Okay. And if you were an animal, what would you be?
Mountain goats. It is, there's a joke among trail runners, especially in Hong Kong, because there's so many climbs. The people who are fast at climbs, they call them mountain goats. So I like to be a mountain goat.
Okay, good. If you could get yourself anything at all in the world, what would it be?
Well, if someone can invent like how to download a language, you'd have to spend hours and hours learning it. That would be fantastic. So yeah, French or Chinese would be. If you could just insert that into my mind and I'll be fluent in it, that'd be great.
That would be very handy as well, I'm sure. This is an additional question just for you because of your position at school. Biggest economical tip of 2021? Be
a minimalist. So that means have less to have more. So I've been a lot more resourceful recently. I like, for example, my Garmin watch. I've had it for 5 years and it's still working fine. I had to replace the strap, and if it lasts another 5 years, great. I don't need to buy a new one. Just keep using the things you've got, and if it doesn't have a use, sell it or get rid of it.
Okay, I like that. And then last question of the day, biggest life lesson you can share in under 60 seconds to our listeners?
So, I'm 41 now. I'm very active. I intend to be active for the rest of my life. I love working. I don't intend to retire early or anything like that. But I think life is short. I think it's really important to find what you do for a living to be something you enjoy. And I love teaching. I love being in a learning environment, either learning or delivering, standing on a stage, speaking, training, all that kind of stuff. So I feel at home being a teacher. Also, it's allowed me to travel, working in Hong Kong, and, I could move anywhere if I wanted to, but I'm very settled here. But yeah, if you can find out what you enjoy doing, what you're good at, and if you can find out ways you can make a living out of that, I think that would be a great tip to consider.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Trethewey. That was a very insightful podcast. And guys, we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Knattering with the Knights. If you want to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes, then please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please reach out to your PE teacher if you have any feedback or ideas about topics you would like to see and hear about in the future. In the meantime, have a great week and we will see you next time.